Hi, and welcome to episode 18 of the ChessTDD series. As you can see right off the bat, I forgot to scroll in on the Trello board, so my apologies. What I've moved over is a card about adding a remove piece method, and it took me a little while. You'll see me kind of move back and forth here to remind myself what was going on. It's been a week and a half since I looked at this, and I'm spending all my time in a Java code base. So I'm back here in C#, happy to have my lambdas back. Doing a little housekeeping here, enabling ncrunch too, getting the environment set up again. And so what I'm doing here is kind of reminding myself that's sort of a busy card. Change add piece to use a new method. It made a lot of sense to me at the time, but I didn't get it at first. So I was looking around to see if, do I have a remove piece method? Turns out I didn't. Then I was playing around here a bit with trying to figure out what to name the test class that I was going to create. And you'll notice a squiggly under there. At some point, I think I figure out I need to update the name of that file and the class name to be the same, or CodeRush will complain at me. So it did take me a minute to get started here, and my apologies for the fumbling, but I guess that's kind of the nature of this series. Trying to figure out where this existing method is tested and where I'd put the new method and everything else. So hopefully I'm going to get started here soon. I should remember this. I coded it not too long ago, but then I took a break and went out for a run. So we shall see. But here I go. I get around to adding this new class in here soon. And I'm still experimenting with this style of test naming in the Java code base I'm in too. I've been adopting a convention I've seen there, which is to start the test names with when such and such is true, something else should. So it's kind of a journey. I'm experimenting a bit. So what I want to do here is I don't have a remove piece method yet, but I'm going to create this test class with context set up for remove piece. And that reminded me that I didn't have the proper naming for this class, so I made that correction with the IDE. And then back over to where I was. So I'm going to define a method, and this is back to the kind of easy TDD cadence that started off this series, which is I want a method to exist. It doesn't exist, so I'm going to make it exist. And the first thing I want to say here is essentially that I want to call on a chessboard where the first row is populated with pieces. I want to call remove piece on 1-1, which is the rook on the left side of the board. And then I want to verify that after I've called remove piece, that space is null when I call get piece there. So, I mean, it's not rocket science. The idea is there was a piece there. I remove the piece, then there shouldn't be a piece there. So what I'm doing now is going back to reference how I've done test setup in these other classes. Here's this static method that I'm calling, and I'm going to kind of duplicate some of this setup. What I kind of started to do and then backed away from and made note of for myself in the actual blog post too was I started to want to copy this stuff. If you find yourself doing copy and paste in general, that's not a good sign. Copy and paste is almost invariably a poor way of automating something that sucks, frankly, typing repetitive code. But the problem isn't that you're not entering repetitive code fast enough. The problem is needing repetitive code. So I force myself to type out, and I think I've mentioned this before, but I force myself to type out things so I feel that pain. It's kind of like taking a painkiller and then doing something bad to yourself if you're copying and pasting. You're treating the wrong thing. You should avoid doing the thing that's painful. So I like to feel this pain to tell me that I have a problem. And in this case, the smell when it comes to test setup being copied over and over again indicates that you might have a common context amongst all these classes, these test classes that you're setting up. So maybe I should find a way to remove, to consolidate and rename. Maybe instead of get moves from, I'm not specific about which method this is calling. You could always invoke a helper method, I guess, but I am not a huge fan of that approach in tests. It creates indirection that makes it sort of hard to reason about the tests. So the way I see it, you can reorganize your tests, or maybe if you're invoking the same kind of setup over and over again in your production or in your test code, that might indicate to you that you've got a very common use case that you might want to account for somehow in your production code with some kind of default configuration or sensible defaults at a class level. I don't know what exactly, and maybe we'll revisit this in future episodes because I'm not overly satisfied with the way these. I like the descriptiveness of the names, and I want to keep that, but I don't like this kind of repetitive test setup, and it feels very kludgy to use this static method and keep calling the one class's setup from the others. That's indirection right there, because in those other classes, I can't really see the setup. I have to go to some other file. Anyway, what I've done is written a failing test because it wasn't compiling. So now I'm going to make it compile. I'm going to stop throwing an exception, and I'm back to green. So now I've created this condition, and then I want to assert that the piece in question has been removed. And one thing I recall that I forgot to do here, I think, was go back and factor out once this was green, that common board coordinate. So oops. But this is pretty simple. Now, this is sort of a busy class, and I've got a good bit of functionality in here. So what I can do is this add piece null origin, the way I left off at the end of the last episode, or I guess I called it square in question. And that has the expected effect, which is I've added a null piece, so to speak. Now, I think I went back over to the Trello board and was trying to figure out what I meant about the second part of what I was doing. Or no, I guess I did some refactoring here. So instead of that awkward construct in move piece, I want to say that, or instead of that awkward construct with add piece, at least I can call my new abstraction here remove piece. So that looks a little better. Move piece now does some validation, figures out where the piece is, adds it to the new place, removes it from the old. That makes some intuitive sense. Now here I start to do an interesting thing. I'm looking at this array, and I want to see this in as few places as possible. So here I'm accessing it with the array, and I want to get rid of that because I don't need it. I already have this getPiece method. I would like to see as few references to this kind of bare metal abstraction as possible. I have some nice higher level abstractions that I've built in this class. Add piece, move piece, remove piece. These and get piece. Those four things should be usable pretty much anywhere else. So I'm scrolling and looking around here, and then I think I start tabbing around with CodeRush to make sure that I'm using this in as few places as possible. So I'm initializing it. I need it in add pieces, or add piece, and I need it in get piece, and I think that's it, which is one read and one write. I think that's probably all the better I can do. But I start to look around here and think, and I don't remember if it was another card or not, but I didn't like this idea that I would do piece removal by adding a null piece. That's sort of awkward and weird. It violates the principle of least surprise. So not only do I want to stop doing it, even in the class, I'd like to not allow that to happen. I don't want to let my callers even have that option. So I've given them a better option in the form of a remove piece, but now I don't want to let them do it. Why allow two different ways to do the same thing? That's confusing. So I'm going to write a test method here that asserts that I'm throwing an exception. Now I'm not remembering quite what I was doing. I think I was throwing an argument exception. I was taking care of another bit of housekeeping. I think I want to see that, my apologies. This is where I was saying is a sanity element, another test on remove piece. If I try to remove a piece from a square that doesn't have a piece, I want to throw an argument exception. I'll get to the bit about not allowing this add piece null in a bit. So here I'm doing a little housekeeping to give this a better name, coordinate for removal. That's nice and clear. If I get a piece from the coordinate for removal and it doesn't exist, then I throw an exception. Otherwise, I add null, and that's ugly. So I think reading that awkward construct is what made me go on to this other card that was on the Trello board. But not before kind of looking around a bit to see. I think I was trying to see if anybody was calling it externally. I don't have an actual API that's using this. This is the highest level API, so it would only be the test methods that were doing add piece null. So I poked around a bit to see which of any tests I'd be breaking, and then I said, you know what? Just going to write the new test case and see what breaks. So I went back over here. I think, yeah, so I'm going to say let's throw an exception if we have a null argument here. And I think at first I didn't remember whether board coordinate was a struct or not. So I tried to throw an exception in the case of both arguments, and I don't know if I appropriately rename this because I'm pretty sure it is a struct and I can't pass in null. So what I'm really going to be testing here is if I try to add a null piece to the board, I want to throw an exception, because from an external perspective, as I mentioned before, that doesn't really make any sense. Adding a null piece when I have a remove piece method, it's semantically weird. As I mentioned, it gives you two different ways to do the same thing, which is generally not a great idea. And, you know, I don't like to accept null to methods unless it's very deliberate and for good reason. So got a compiler error that took me a minute to figure out. Yeah, I need another parenthesis. And now I have a failing test. So how do I make this pass? Well, I'll add a guard to this method and then see what breaks. And I'm sure what's going to break is things that are calling anything that results in remove piece, because right now that's implemented by adding piece with null. So sure enough, I see that I have 4 tests that are failing, and I'm in a bit of an awkward situation here because I want to get these tests back to green, but that's a lot of different tests to be failing. However, in this case, I think it's okay because I have a strong suspicion as to how I can get back to green, and I think I can achieve that by, and this is where I debated a little, you know, simplest thing to get back to green, I don't know, but what I'm going to do is, I didn't actually extract a method, but I'm going to create a private method. And in this private method, I actually am going to allow a null argument for piece. So nobody outside of the class can see this, and that's really what I'm concerned about the API that I'm exposing. So I'm going to have the same signature as the add piece method, but without the guard. So this is going to take a board coordinate, and here I'm basically going to implement the same logic that I had where, let's see. Oh, I probably, yeah, they're the actual array accesses. So here I'm saying, okay, you know, whatever reference you pass me, I will update the array to contain that reference. And so instead of internally calling add piece the public method, I'll call this private method where I don't have a guard. And then in the public method add piece, I'll put the guard. And then I get the names wrong because that's what happens when you copy and paste. Shame on me. See, you know, there's just no avoiding being a hypocrite with some things. I go on and on about how, you know, I try never to copy and paste, and that's true. I try not to do it, but, you know, even those little things, you get them wrong. I mean, that wasn't a big mistake. I'm already back to green, but nevertheless, you can see it in action, and you can see how tempting and easy it is to do. It's quick, but it always causes problems, even invariably on whatever scale. So now I'm going to do a little bit of refactoring. I don't think I need this. I'm not too worried about the name of the thing that's thrown in the exception, and I don't think I need this if piece to move is null anymore, because I'm going to call add piece, which is going to actually have that check. So there's no sense in duplicating it once I have that. So now conceptually, this is getting a lot easier to move or read. And I think I went a little too far. Got the arguments wrong here or something. If I remember correctly, this is about to go red, and then I'm going to say, whoop, full stop, back out to green. Yeah, so I do that, and uh-oh, I'm red, and it's often good if you're not sure why you've gone red, just go back, get to green, think about it, figure it out, try something different. So now I'm green again, and I'm going to be a little less ambitious, and I'm just going to get rid of this guard condition. So move piece becomes sort of intuitive. When you get past 2 coordinates, you get the piece that's at the origin coordinate. You set the destination coordinate to that piece, and then you remove the piece from origin. So it's pretty well a move conceptually. Now I've inlined this variable, set piece, get piece, origin, destination. On second thought, I don't really like that inlining with the nested method call. It's a little less clear, so I think this is good. And that's a good lesson to take away from this too. When you have a nice test suite covering things, you can sort of slam things around all over the place quickly and see what you find readable. And if you're staying green, that's cool. Readability is so important, but if your code is delicate and not covered with tests, you're going to kind of shy away from doing things to make it more readable. Inlining, extracting, renaming even. You'll just kind of naturally be deterred from doing that stuff. So what I'm doing now is giving this class a once-over. It's pretty readable up in the public stuff, but I am detecting that there are 2 very different concerns emerging in this class, so I think that's going to be something we need to revisit. There's all the manipulation logic of the array, and then there's this whole other concern of figuring out blocking. So I think the methods at the bottom, all that private stuff under this iceberg, is going to need to be another class with its own test methods. Now what you're seeing me do is I'm starting to look at the other cards on the Trello board, and then I also started looking at the time and seeing that I was about 16 minutes in or so, and knowing myself, if I started another card, I'd be at 25 minutes trying to scramble to get something done in a hurry. So it's kind of late. I decided just to call it a night and leave off at sort of an easy, clear place where I'd implemented remove piece, and am ready to sort of pick up next time with whatever the next card is. I think there's some refactoring and housekeeping that I'd like to do again, but could also press on. I'll see kind of where the mood strikes me next week or whenever I'm doing this post. So that's it. Not a whole lot more to see, and I'll try to get the Trello board a little bigger for you next time. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time around.